All right, we're going to do a quick demonstration of two-point perspective. We're going to start by drawing a horizon line. I'm doing so randomly here on a piece of graph paper that I use as scrap paper from time to time. We're going to put down two marks on either side of that horizon line. They're going to serve as our dual focal points here for two-point perspective. We're going to draw a vertical line that intersects the horizon, and we're going to draw a little barn here today, perhaps maybe a barn scene if we have time, which will include some additional landscape elements. And I'm using my ruler because I just don't want my shaky hand to create all kinds of squiggly lines and missteps. So I'm drawing lines from the vanishing points to my vertical line, which will be the outside corner of the wall of the barn within view from our perspective. And then I'm connecting the various pieces of the barn. Now I'm going to erase some of my guidelines just so the page doesn't get too busy. Now I'm thinking I may recreate this video, perhaps maybe with a Sharpie or a darker lead to make it a little bit more visible. But before I do that, I'm going to finish this up. I drew lines on both sides here of the barn within view that intersect one another, running from one corner to the other, and then drew a vertical line at the point of the intersection, which will give me my midpoint for these walls that are at an angle, which is really important when trying to create relatively accurate perspective when drawing things like a roof peak, like I'm doing right now. And I'll keep connecting the various lines depicting the elements of the barn to the vanishing points on either side of the horizon. And I'll just keep working my way through the process as such. I'll keep connecting the different pieces of the barn one by one and lining them up with the vanishing points, and then from time to time erasing my guidelines like I'm doing right now. So I'm just going to strengthen some of the lines that I've already made just so they're a little bit more visible. Now that I have a feel for where this drawing is going, I came to this with really no plan in mind at all other than to demonstrate two-point perspective. So now I'm going to go ahead and draw the outline of a door, considering the perspective and the midpoint line that I've created by crisscrossing lines from corner to corner. And I've laid in that outline. And this is going to be a two-door barn entrance, so we're going to have two doors that are part of that entrance, and we'll put some details in there in a moment. We're going to have a little opening above the barn door, perhaps maybe a hay bale where we might shoot hay out of the barn into a truck. And we'll strengthen some of those lines. Now I'm feeling pretty confident, and we'll put some indication of some details like the crisscross support slats that would be on a barn like this one. Okay, now we're going to do another opening on the side of the barn, perhaps maybe a slightly larger opening. And this is going to have crisscross slats on it, support slats, kind of like a big shutter. Perhaps maybe it's a window that can open that could allow for more hay and other farm-related items to be passed from the second level of the barn down to a truck or some other device intended for transport around the farm. So we'll go ahead and lay in those outlines and we'll stay true to our 2-point perspective, having each of the lines tie back to the appropriate focal point on the horizon. And we'll strengthen some of these lines once again, just to make them a little bit more visible now that we have even more confidence in as far as the direction with which this drawing is going. Now, this wouldn't be a barn without a cupola, so we're going to go ahead and put one up there. We're going to have the peak face in the opposite direction of the barn peak for this cupola. And we're going to put it aligned with the center point created by the crisscross lines on that front barn wall. So it's going to be a little bit off center, but that's intended to help it align with our 2-point perspective that we're using a little bit. We'll see how that works. So I created some vertical lines for the front and the side wall that would be within view. And I'm going to go ahead and create like a little steeped pitch roof on that little cupola up top. Again, facing in the opposite direction of the barn's roof peak itself. I'll use my ruler here to align these little lines with my focal point and my 2-point perspective scheme here. And we'll see how that goes for us. There you have it. That kind of came together okay in my view. And I'll just put in some indications of some additional details, perhaps maybe a little opening in that cupola and some indications of the roof overhang on the cupola itself. Now we'll strengthen some of the areas. Normally toward the base of an object like this on a plane, you'll see a little bit of a darker shadow with its connection to the ground. We'll strengthen some of the other lines. And now we'll have some additional fun. I think what we'll do is we'll just strike some additional guidelines emanating from both of these focal points. And we'll just see where it takes us. Perhaps maybe an indication of a road or two, or maybe a row of trees. Perhaps maybe we'll incorporate some other elements normally associated with a landscape, like some clouds. We'll see where it goes. We're just going to draw these guidelines in for now. And you can take this as far as your imagination and your energy will take you. Now, if you kind of squint your eyes a little bit, if you have the active imagination, I think you might, some of these guidelines themselves may look like they make a road, or at least give the suggestion of a road running off into the distance. I'm going to put some trees in. I'm going to try and honor these guidelines that I have, both in the sky and on the ground plane, to kind of guide me around, what this style of perspective might help me indicate the height of each of these trees would be, assuming they're of relatively similar height, as they come closer on the ground plane. So I'm just going to sketch in an indication of some evergreen trees that might be younger, or maybe about young adult size evergreen trees, if you will. And we'll go ahead and sketch those out, and we'll bring, let's see, maybe one even closer. How about right here in the foreground to push everything back a little bit? So I'll go ahead and I'll sketch this in. Now, if I were using a different type of perspective for this drawing and considering maybe the use of aerial perspective, this tree in the foreground would have much more detail, and it would be much more intensely colored or saturated. In this case, it would probably be a lot darker in value than the other trees, and that would pull it forward and push the other elements of this drawing back, creating additional depth. We don't have that at our disposal, or we do to a very limited degree, considering the tools we're working with and the goal of this video. So I'm going to kind of leave it as it is. I may darken it a little bit. We'll see how this progresses. And yeah, I think I will. I'm going to go ahead and use the side and just put some cross hatching in for this one, and perhaps maybe the next one that's closest to this one in the foreground, just to make it a little bit darker, create the illusion of a little bit more detail, and hopefully pull it forward, creating some additional depth to help enhance the 2-point perspective that this drawing was built upon. Now for some cross hatching on the walls of the barn. I'm going to do it and try and align these marks with the aerial perspective guidelines in an attempt to help enhance the three-dimensionality of the barn and kind of honor the scheme, the 2-point perspective scheme that we've been following here. So on each of those wall planes for the barn, including the cupola up top, I'm going to go ahead and do that. I'm going to strengthen some of the lines just to make sure they're connecting the way that they should. And I'm thinking maybe we'll go ahead and create some indication of some clouds. So I have some additional guidelines based upon this 2-point perspective scheme running up into the sky, and I'm going to use those. So what we often will forget is the sky itself is a plane. It runs off into the distance, and when we have clouds in the sky, they too will have to abide by the laws of perspective. They'll get smaller as they run off into the distance. And when we have a 2-point perspective scheme like this, the same principles would apply. And I'm going to loosely follow them because clouds are kind of a nebulous form. They're always changing shape. So we have a little bit more wiggle room than we would, let's say, with a structure like a barn or a house or a building. So there you have it. 2-point perspective, very quickly done at regular speed in less than 15 minutes from imagination. And this concept is something that you can use in the field if you're painting or drawing. It's something you can use in the studio. It's something you can use just as a tool when you're drawing from life to help your images make sense and help simplify them. And it's certainly something that you could use when creating images from imagination like we're doing here today. So once again, 2-point perspective, simplified for you. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe if you felt this was helpful in any way. Stay well.